Hector Berlioz was a musician before his time. He revolutionized orchestration and produced works on a scale never seen before. But he also was a frustrated musician. He spent his career chasing official positions and the salaries that went with them, only to be moderately successful later in life. My name is Dr. Dominique Royam, and I'm a music director, conductor, and music communicator here to help you achieve a deeper connection to the music you love. Follow me on social media at Dominique Royam for more content. Let's talk about Hector Berlioz. A moment of the pronunciation of Berlioz's name. We're not sure how he pronounced it. Most people today pronounce it with the voiced Z at the end of it, but he used to be confused in the press with his friend, violinist Charles de Berlioz, whose final T is silent. Another line of evidence for the silent Z is the rebus attached to the caricature statuette by Jean-Pierre Datin, made in 1836. The letters B-E-R, followed by a bed, li in French, raised above the ground, or O in French. This demonstrated that the sound of the Z was sometimes dropped. I will continue with the well-known pronunciation with the final Z for this video. Berlioz was born on December 11, 1803, the eldest child of Louis Berlioz and his wife, Marie Antoinette Josephine. The couple went on to have 5 more children, 2 of which survived infancy, Nancy and Adele. Berlioz's sisters remained close to him for his whole life. His father was a physician in the small commune at Côte-Saint-Andre in the south of France. Louis was agnostic and liberal, and was known as the first physician in Europe to write about acupuncture. Berlioz's mother was a strict Roman Catholic, so there was tension in the home. After a brief foray into local schools, his father educated Berlioz at home. In his autobiography, Memoir, Berlioz remembered liking geography, travel books, and the classics, being moved to tears by Virgil's account of Dido and Aeneas. Later in his studies, he began to study philosophy, rhetoric, and anatomy, since his father wanted Berlioz to follow his footsteps and become a doctor. Music did not feature heavily in his education at home. He took flute and guitar lessons from a local musician and played some piano, but was a mediocre player at best for the rest of his life. He later contended that it was to an advantage to not play the piano because it saved me from the tyranny of keyboard habits, so dangerous to thought, and from the lure of conventional harmonies. When Berlioz was 12, he fell hopelessly infatuated with the girl 4 years his senior, Estelle Dubuff. For the rest of his life, Berlioz continued to see her as kind of an ideal of feminine beauty. She inspired many of his first compositions. He came to know the real Estelle in old age and told her that she had long inspired the amorous scenes in his music. This was the first of many love interests for Berlioz. Playwright Ernest Legouvé, who knew Berlioz for over 3 decades, said that love was the alpha and omega of his existence. At 17, 1 year past the minimum, Berlioz passed the oral examination and was awarded the Baccalaureate et Lettres, the social key to many professions. He then took the 5-day coach ride to Paris to enroll in the Faculty of Medicine to pursue the career chosen by his father. After 2 years of troubled study, including, according to his memoirs, jumping through the dissection room window to escape on his first day, Berlioz was awarded the Baccalaureate ès Physique. This made his family very happy and smoothed his way into upper echelons of society, where music was but one conversation piece. During his time at the University of Paris Medicine Department, he also was initiated into the world of music through the lively art scene of the capital. Berlioz began to learn the art of musical composition by going to the opera and copying out the scores of other composers. He became the private pupil of Jean-François Lesueur, and a year later, aged 21, he wrote to his father about his plan to follow a career in music. And so great is the depth of this desire, which is nothing if not noble, that I should prefer to be Gluck of Meul, dead, than to be what I am now in the fullness of life. Berlioz followed up this letter by enrolling in the Paris Conservatoire to study in Lesueur's course in composition for 4 years, and Antonin Reicha's course on fugue and counterpoint for 2 years. Cherubini, the new director of the school, accepted Berlioz into these classes on an exceptional basis because the age limit for the classes was 20 and Berlioz was then 23. Berlioz composed a number of youthful operas, hoping to get them on stage. Composing operas was one of the only ways to support yourself as a composer in Paris at the time. However, performance of the opera or the opera comique required pull and the prestige of the Prix de Rome, a yearly award given out by the Académie des Beaux-Arts of the Institut de France. The first round of the competition was fugal writing, and if the fugue was judged highly enough, the composers were entered into the second part of the competition, writing a new cantata or lyric scene for orchestra and 1 to 3 voices. The winner would then get governmental funds to spend 2 years in Rome, 1 year in Germany, and 2 years back in Paris establishing themselves as artists. Berlioz entered the competition once before he was a student of the Conservatoire in 1826, but did not get past the fugal examination. To push the judge's hand by crafting public support, Berlioz gave 2 concerts of his music in 1828 and 1829, but not only composer, but as conductor, impresario, orchestra manager, copyist, managing agent, and publicist. This was the first time in a long line of concert put on by Berlioz to bring his music to the French people and to the wider Europe. The first concert's expenses exceeded profits, so the difference had to be made up by loans from family and friends. The press was largely favorable. It was a debut that will lead somewhere, as printed in the Revue de Musicale. The concerts did garner some of the judges' favor, and Berlioz won the second prize in 1828. With the second prize, history would project that he would win the top prize the next year, but his entry of Cleopatra and unusual harmonies and unconventional melodies stymied the judges, and they gave no award that year. The next year, Berlioz purposefully wrote something more pedestrian, a cantata named Sarnandapal, and won first prize. His composition of the work coincided with the L'Étoile Glorieuse, or the July Revolution. The revolution was ignited by Charles X's Edict of July 26th that suspended the freedom of the press and thus revoked one of the fundamental freedoms guaranteed in the Constitutional Charter of 1814, about which Berlioz said in a letter to his father, "Only the desperate importance of this competition was able to keep me inside our barricaded and thickly walled fortress." He regretted not joining in the effort of those who had paid with their blood for the purchase of our liberties. Around the same time as Berlioz's win of the Prix de Rome, he was also completing one of his masterworks, Symphonie fantastique, subtitled An Episode in the Life of an Artist. The episode, a tale of romantic desire, unrequited love, imaginary murder, and hellish revenge, was linked to Berlioz's obsession with the Irish actress Harriet Smithson. Berlioz saw her play Ophelia in Hamlet on September 11, 1827, and was smitten. At the same time, Berlioz also found a love of Shakespeare, helping him illuminate the mysteries of existence. The two were fused in Berlioz's mind, the dramatic poetry of Shakespearean verse and the beautiful actress. Berlioz tried many times to communicate with Smithson by letter or hand-delivered message, but seeing her was out of the question. Berlioz poured his unrequited love for Smithson into the Symphonie fantastique. It's a 5-movement symphony with an explicit program that was distributed as program notes. Berlioz did start to downplay the program at the end of his life when explicit programs went out of fashion. The most well-known aspect of the Symphonie fantastique is its use of idée fixe. The melody that is introduced in the first movement is repeated in each successive movement with some changes that reflect the emotional evolution of the story. It's a compositional technique that Berlioz pioneered. It was taken up by Wagner and renamed leitmotif. The technique took over romantic and post-romantic music and is still used today, especially in movies. Let's listen to the melody as it is in the first movement. Critics of the time noted its asymmetry. It's 2 half-bar phrases, the first 8 bars long and the second 7 bars long. This was a major departure from the standard model of even phrases and creates some interesting wrinkles as the melody develops. Let's hear the idée fixe from the first movement. By the fifth movement, the Idée fixe has become a twisted, ironic shadow of the original, depicting the change of the beloved from the pinnacle of idolized love to a laughing, jeering witch in hell. The melody is now a dance at a Black Sabbath. Let's listen to that now. The Symphonie fantastique is a large, imposing work, but has the cast of other mainstream works by Beethoven and Mozart. Berlioz used well-known forms like sonata, theme and variations, and others to structure his massive work, giving it a grounding in the music of the day. In spite of that, critics still slighted his harmonic shifts, even though most of them had already been seen in the works of Beethoven, and marked his asymmetrical melodies out for scorn. Many in the French musical community at the time considered Berlioz to have plenty of genius but not enough talent, calling his compositions into question. Many of his harmonizations, focusing on thirds instead of dominant and subdominant harmonies, are the same colorations that other Romantic composers used, but for Berlioz it was a flaw. Harriet Smithson, the focus of the Idée fixe in the Symphonie fantastique, did not attend the premiere in December 1830. Berlioz's ardor for Smithson was temporarily cooled by love for another, Camille Moke. It was this relationship he was chasing after when Berlioz won the Prix de Rome, hoping to prove to Camille's parents that he would be a good provider for their daughter. Camille and Berlioz were devoted to each other until Berlioz was forced to travel to Italy as a stipulation of winning the Prix de Rome. After Berlioz's departure, Camille's mother procured what she saw as a better match for her daughter, the piano manufacturer Camille Pleyel. Camille and Pleyel married in 1831, while Berlioz was still in Rome. When Berlioz heard the news of Camille's marriage, he hatched a plot to sneak back to Paris to kill the newlyweds, but thought better of it by the time he arrived in Nice. On his return to Rome, Berlioz began to write the sequel to the Symphonie fantastique, the Retour à la vie, the Return to Life, later named Lilo, for the narrator, solo voices, chorus, and orchestra. Upon Berlioz's return from Rome, he put on another concert featuring the Symphonie fantastique, along with its sequel, Le Retour à la vie. This time Harriet Smithson was in the audience, along with Liszt, Paganini, Chopin, and others. There were over 20 reviews in the press, ranging from admiration to contempt. After listening to the works and realizing it was about her, Harriet Smithson agreed to meet Berlioz. 2 weeks later, Berlioz told Liszt that he was desperately in love again. Berlioz postponed his trip to Germany and began to think of marriage. His family was not as receptive to this match as they were of Moke, and went so far as rescinding the income he was receiving from his father. This created a vicious circle. Without the income from his family, Smithson was dubious of Berlioz's ability to care for her, and she began to have doubts about the marriage. At the end of August 1833, Berlioz was at his wit's end about Smithson's vacillations and threatened to go to Germany with a chorus girl in tow. Smithson agreed to marry Berlioz. Thank you for joining me in the series of the life of Berlioz. If you'd like to learn more about the composer, a really great short biography is The Life of Berlioz by Peter Bloom. A link to it can be found in the description box below. Like this video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel for more. What do you want to learn about next? Leave me a comment down below. You can also support the making of these videos on Patreon. These videos take over 20 hours of research to complete, so Patreon is a great way to show your support. The bibliography for this video can be found on my website, dominiqueroyam.com. Interested in seeing my process? I document it on my social media, so follow me for more updates. My handles are listed below. Thanks again, and see you in my next video.